Shalom again. Welcome to another exciting edition of Torah Watchman Show, LLC. Yes, we're a limited liability corporation. I hope to go nonprofit soon in the state of Maryland, in the country of the United States of America. This is your humble host again, Reb ben-Emmett. You can find me only on YouTube. YouTube's Google subscribers, you have only one requirement: get a free Google Gmail account. They don't pay me for saying that. Once you get that account, you can subscribe to all my videos on YouTube. And I hope that you share all the wealth of knowledge and love and truth that everyone is willing to hear it. You're right? Yes, that is my motto. Anyway, I'm a bit studious this evening, and I want to share with you something that I've been reading from a very good book. And yes, this is a continuation. I guess I can call it part 4 of what are Karaite Jews, what is Karaite Judaism, what is Karaitism in general, and how it's differentiated from traditional rabbinical Judaism, aka Orthodox rabbis and Jews. Okay, I've come from the Orthodox world. I said this before. I'm a Baal Teshuva Jew. I was not born with a Hebrew spoon in my mouth. I was not exposed to cheder, traditional cheder, much less yeshiva, even though I've attended an online yeshiva for the last 2 years and just trying to understand the other side of the coin for kosherut, what it means to be Jewish. That's a quintessential question that even the best minds and sages and rabbis still have not completely answered yet. Or maybe not answered it in your favor. But anyway, all kidding aside, I want to talk about Shabbat or Sabbath rules in respect to the opinion and worldview of Karaite Jews. It's very fascinating when you take the Torah verbatim, apart from any kind of opinionated works on Shabbat. For instance, I have 8 volumes of the Mishna Buruma, okay? And what that is all the rules, according to rabbinical experts, supposedly, about Malachi. All the rules about Shabbat, how to prepare for Shabbat, what to do during Shabbat and what definitely not to do, and how to end it properly, okay? What's fascinating, I thought that Karaite Jews were strictly isolationists. If you base that opinion by reading in the Talmud, like I have for years, and I've only had a few Karaite friends to expose me to the other side of the coin, but again, I've announced formally on YouTube and Facebook that my whole family is transitioning over to Karaite Judaism versus rabbinical Judaism. And there is a verse. This is like a boxing match sometime. However, certain sages have actually borrowed, I guess you would say, good practices that they reach group consensus with rabbinates on Shabbat. And I want to cover a few of these things because I find it very interesting. You can look up this book here. I love it. It is titled An Introduction to Karaite Judaism, History, Theology, Practice, and Customs. It is an Al-Kasani Center publication. I have purchased a lot of Karaite books and texts recently. In fact, I recently received in the mail, finally, a Pesach handbook or manual on how Karaite Jews exercise their faith on Pesach compared to what most Jews do, okay? Pesach is very different, I would say, in many respects than rabbinical aspects. So let's get started. First of all, the proper way to say the word for the seventh day, literally the meaning is Sabbath. Why not Shabbat? Why not Sabbath or other Shabbos and other Shabbos and other words like Yiddish and things of this nature? Most people say Shabbat Shalom. There's nothing wrong with that. It's universal. In fact, our Muslim brethren, cousins, Arab cousins, they know what Shalom is. They know what Shabbat is. They know about days of rest and things like that. We share a lot in common with Arab Muslims. We really do. But as far as Sabbath is concerned, you talk about, I mentioned this before, a shin and sin. A sin is actually seeing something, but not letting anyone know you saw it. In other words, I see the truth, but I'm not going to reveal that truth to anyone else. I'm definitely not going to commit that sin. All joking aside, this is the first letter, Hebrew letter, for the word Sabbath. Okay? The reason why it has an S, like in English, a S sound versus a sh sound, is simply the way traditionally it's transliterated. Okay? Of course, if you read from a Torah, ancient Hebrew, with a couple exceptions among certain Karaite synagogues and their rabbis, there's no vowels, there's no Masoretic text there. So if you see the letters spelled out, which are all consonants, you literally come to one conclusion, which is Sabbath. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. So observance of Shabbat, as you know, is the seventh day is universal among all observant Jews. First of all, who is my target audience for this video? Let's get that out of the way. I have a large and growing Noahide audience. Okay, a lot of B'nai Noach. I look at them as apprenticeship for being Jews one day. Some of them are happy with being B'nai Noach the rest of their life. God bless them for that. And some others actually want to have a hybrid kind of worship experience in which they emulate traditional Jewish customs, like in Andhra Pradesh in India. There is an orphanage I support there, and they celebrate Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, even Rosh Chodesh, being a new moon, by choice. And of course, rabbinates that you are mandated to do these things. Well, these Noahides, these B'nai Noach, actually do this simply because they love God. They love Elohim. They love the holy God of Israel, the God of Moshe. God bless them for that. So it's interesting. Also, my target audience, hopefully, is a growing group of Karaite Jews who would like to hear from a Baal Teshuva Jew like me, who comes from a very deep rabbinical background as myself. I'm a student. I'm very educated. I have a lot of books in my house, and I'm sorry, forgive me, but I do have several Talmudic tractates. I also have Mishnah Torah. I favor Ramban over anyone else. And of course, the Mishna Buruma, which is very famous and is used by a lot. This is the Malachi. It's simply the Rabbinite rule book for Shabbat. Thou shalt do this, and thou shalt not do that. Okay, so as far as what do Karaites believe? Well, we believe a lot like rabbinates when it comes to Shabbat. And I said this before, that if we are diametrically opposed in everything, we're arguing, debating, criticizing each other, trying to find fault with another person. Some people, some personalities out there, they're just downright hateful, aren't they? Even Jews, they're just downright hateful. I mean, is your glass of Menashev's wine half full or half empty? How do you look at that? It's easier to criticize than to say, God bless you. And I understand, and I have an open mind to what you say, even though I disagree with you, but I appreciate your friendship. That requires virtue. That's all I'm going to say about that. But anyway, in Davarim 5:15, it's very important to Elohim to remind us continually, like we need to remember, the Zakor of Shabbat is the most important aspect, is remembrance of that. But we once were slaves in Egypt. We could not celebrate Sabbath, the seventh day rest, while in Egypt because it was a corrupt, unclean, polytheistic nation. In fact, we couldn't even offer any animal sacrifices to Elohim until we were outside of that evil place. And I'm talking about a place of necromancers, a place of evil spirits. I don't know if you believe in demons and entities and like that. The adversary had a lot of work, and that was their playground in Egypt. And then the Jews under slavery and bondage for more than 230 something years there. Okay, until God told Moshe, go down and tell the Pharaoh, let my people go. Okay, but hand in hand, you remember that you once were slaves in Egypt, and God freed you. Why? He freed you so you could enjoy the benefits that Elohim enjoyed on the seventh day of rest, that we can rest with our divine creator. That's a wonderful invitation, right? It's like being invited to a great and powerful king, and you're a peasant, but you're invited to sit at the king's table, at the supper table. You know, rabbis talk about the queen of Shabbat coming to visit you, all the stories about rabbis walking out in the field and singing songs, Lakadodi, other songs like that, Eshakal, and things like this. Like, we like to believe that we're welcoming the Shekinah glory, the kavod of Elohim to come in our home during that time. And I have no disagreement with rabbinates in that, because this is spiritual thinking and it's Kabbalistic, and I love things that are Kabbalistic. I love the Zohar. I'm sorry. Well, if I'm a sinner for saying that, well, I just want to get it out right now. Okay? I do have a nefesh, and I have a multidimensional aspect of my humanity, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, getting back to Shabbat. Okay? I've been reading in his textbook and looking at the complementary aspects between Karaite Jews and rabbinates. Shabbat is a gift. It's a holy gift. It does not. It's not limited in the scope to some Jews while ignoring other Jews. Of course, during a time of persecution under Russian pogroms and war and Roman Catholic exiles, and of course the Holocaust in Nazi Europe, our menorahs were hung upside down, our Shabbat candles were blown out, whatever Ashkenazi, Hasidim, or whatever, we couldn't even have a meal. We couldn't have a feast per se on Shabbat, no matter who you were or what your denominational believing construct was. Well, if you go into the mode of thinking for Shabbat, and you should prepare yourself. Karaite women actually, they go shopping on Thursday. They buy all their food, and then they immediately started baking and cooking, preparing delicious delicacies. There's actually a Karaite cookbook, and I printed out several of those recipes for my wife to encourage her to learn how to do this. And I actually like some of the food. Who does not like stuffed grape leaves, right? That's an Israeli delicacy. I even had that on my current show. But anyway, it is wonderful to know that we can come into general agreement, whether Karaite Jews or rabbinates, on Shabbat. The biggest difference is Malachi, and Rabbinate thinking and orthodoxy. They have 39 Malachi, which is based on everything you needed to do for building, installing, moving, and maintaining the tabernacle and the Mishkan. I thought it was a pretty good standard protocol on what you should not do during Shabbat, because it's true in the Torah, all the building projects came to a close on Shabbat, and they were resumed after Shabbat. There's a couple of sages of great renown in Karaitism. I want to mention a few of their names, and forgive me if I mispronounce anyone's name. I am new in this, and these names are new to me. Okay? So, for instance, a quote from Hakam Ha-Dayan Yosef Il-Gami. Okay? I like what he said here. The sages strictly prescribe the lighting of fire from the eve of Sabbath until the night following Sabbath, in accordance with the verse in the Torah. You shall cause no fire to burn throughout your habitation. This means your personal residence during Sabbath day. Again, his view that you're strictly forbidden to light any flame even before Shabbat, and Rabbinical Judaism, there's an 18-minute countdown before sunset or the beginning of the new Hebrew day, in which you can make preparations, finish up or whatever you need to do for cooking. They have something called a plotter, which is electric warmer and that kind of thing. Or a lot of these things are frowned on by most Karaite Jews, but some of them, especially in Europe and Crimea, they are much different in their traditions per se than, say, Egyptians, which were more strict, and Karaite Jews in Israel, which are more strict and more Torah-fearing Jews, I would say. But another individual, Hakam Eliyahu, in other words, Hakam the sage, Eliyahu Bashyaki, he was a minority among the Karaite sage mainstream during his time. And he said it's okay to light Shabbat candles or light a flame or some celebratory candle or candle of remembrance or something like that, and light it and let it just let on its natural way to burn throughout Shabbat, and when it burns itself out. Rabbinates have this tradition that it's called law of modification, and if you light a candle or start a candle, especially during high holidays like Yom Kippur, is that you light a candle. You have to keep a candle burning because you have holiday candles versus Shabbat candles and things of this nature. Again, a lot of rules, a lot of techniques and regulations, like in the Mishna Buruma. 8 volumes of that. A lot of reading with that. Anyway, so you have two sages with two divergent opinions, both Karaite sages and both well respected. But who won out? Well, Mr. Yosef Il Gamil won out in his opinion, because the Torah says very clear, and this is something I have not really noticed specifically in this, because I'm going to bring up a use case scenario in a moment, is that, he said that you calls no fire to burn, throughout your habitation the Sabbath day. Okay, you can translate the word calls. Calls probably means to ignite a fire. This was capital punishment, folks. There's one individual detailed in the Torah where he continually, on Shabbat or before Shabbat, continually picked up a bundle or collected a bundle of sticks and limbs and firewood. Well, there's only one reason why a person would do this, to light a fire. And sometimes they got cold in the desert, right? And it's what this person did. And he was accused by multiple witnesses, and he was executed for that as a witness unto Elohim, because when God commanded even Moshe, who was amiss, and said, hey, did you forget what day it is? It's the seventh day. The seventh day was actually first celebrated when the Jews were freed from Egypt. I already said this before, and they were out in the wilderness of Sin in the valley of Mount Sinai, okay? That's when it was actually instituted, and which they actually had some halakha, Moshianic halakha, wrapped around that, okay? So everyone would be educated in that, and no one had to get in trouble, okay? No one had to go to jail because of breaking Shabbat rules. Okay, again, back to Shabbat rules. Well, Karaite sages talk about Malachi, which means work, okay? But what is work? Well, work for the Karaite Jew is a lot different than the Rabbinate. Let me give you an example. There's a tradition, especially in ultra-Orthodoxy, you have toilet paper rolls, it's perforated. Well, they are definitely afraid of tearing any piece of paper, okay? That is a violation, according to them, against their 39 Malachot of work, okay? You can cut with scissors a straight line and that kind of thing without tearing, so they're not tearing. So people literally, before Shabbat, get this, they cut a whole stack of pieces of toilet paper, and even if it's perforated, it's already partially cut, and they stack it in, in the bathrooms for people to use gas or whatever, use the bathroom, whatever. I think it's a little bit comical. In fact, my wife and I did this just to look at it for entertainment, because other people told us they did this in their home. I was curious about it. First of all, no fires are to be burned. You can look this up in Shemot 35:3, calls no fires to burn. The law of modification is different for rabbinates than Karaite Jews, in that if you have any fires burning before Shabbat, you either blow them out, you extinguish them, whatever. There cannot be any fire whatsoever burning in a Karaite home if you are a strict Torah purist, like those from Egypt, which are now settled in Ashdod, and some of them are in American Karaitism and out of San Francisco, California, in the United States. The law of modification for rabbinates means if you have a candle burning, it can continue burning for several hours until Shabbat is over. In fact, there's lone burning candles you can buy at your favorite Judaica or kosher grocery store. You can buy those candles and they burn a long time. Lighting like a Hanukkah menorah. I have actually an Israeli menorah in my house. The oil, the olive oil, burns a long time. Now, I want to quantify something quickly. Okay, now you know that the brazen altar, it had 4 horns around it. This is where the bullocks, the lamb, large animals were sacrificed and slaughtered. And there was a mandate, even during Shabbat, in the temple area, in the tabernacle area, that you would have fires burning there continually, day and night. Also, the menorah was never to go out either, and that was the chief Kohen, the older brother of Moshe, Aaron, be able to make sure those wicks or whatever, those branches, candelabra, the menorah, 7-branch menorah, that had proper oil, virgin oil, and everything else that they were burning continually. This is not the same thing, folks, as your residence or your encampment or your tent, your personal dwelling place. Is not the same thing as the dwelling place for the divine creator, Jehovah, Elohim. So I want to get that out. The law of modification applied to temple and the holy and sacred areas of the temple of Mishkan, not to the private residences of the tribal Israel and their homes where they were nomads in the desert, essentially. And even when they moved in Canaan and took up residence there, took over the cities and everything, and the same rules applied in the Torah. It's very clear. Of course, in the summer, you have long days. It's no big issue because, Shabbat comes kind of late and you're probably tired. You probably go to bed. Well, in a Karaite home, it's quite dark. It can be quite dark. There's something like special artificial lights, not incandescent, but special artificial lights that are considered kosher root by Karaite sages and rabbis. You're allowed to have some general illumination in your home. No one likes to live in a dark cave or a dungeon. And a lot of rabbinates criticized and made fun of my Karaite brothers and sisters about them living as primitives, as cults and heretics or whatever, and not happy on Shabbat. Well, Karaite Jews are very happy in Shabbat. In fact, that is another thing, another rule there. You are to be insanely happy. You are to be singing. You have joy in your heart, a beat in your foot or whatever. We're not even allowed to clap hands in Orthodox circles. You're not allowed to play a tambourine. You're not allowed to sing. You're not allowed, especially a woman, not allowed to sing. But even though King David played at harp day and night, and he wrote all these beautiful psalms and Tehillim, playing his harp while singing, and I know this took place on Shabbat because it gave him joy. So the carrying burden is significant because it also applies to rabbinates. I say anything that's heavy and burdensome, anything that breaks a sweat, anything that you have to strain, anything you do the other 6 days of the week, you are not to do in the 7th day. That's essentially. You're not even allowed to walk too far outside of your Eruv, where you live with your fellow Jews. You're not allowed to walk too far. No strenuous walking, okay? This is not, you don't do a marathon during Shabbat, okay? Even rabbinates, it's kind of funny. You walk with special skip to your step, a little bit different than you would normally walk. There's nothing wrong with that and having fun when you walk with your daughter and your beautiful wife to Shabbat on Saturday morning. No problem with that, okay? I always mentioned about the incandescent lights are not permitted just because of the way they're built. No electricity is allowed in Karaite homes. In fact, they hit the breaker box. That means the freezer is off. That means the air conditioning off, and it gets quite hot in the desert. In Israel, I have not experienced that. Of course, our ancestors in tribal Israel, this is exactly how they lived. And they aspire to be like tribal Jews. And I told my wife, all joking aside, I want to be like a tribal Jew. I want to experience how it was for those people. I mean, am I too good to be like them? Even though we're in a modern digital age and everything's provided for us through artificial intelligence, computer technology, and things like that. I have a smart home. I mean, I have LED lights. No incandescent lights, no halogen lights whatsoever, and they come on automatically by themselves. Of course, they require electricity to operate. So anything that's battery operated is permitted, kosher. For artificial lighting, of course, incandescent bulbs requiring electricity is about how electrons and phosphorus and how all that works, all the electronic gizmos and things like that, how that works is what makes it prohibited. In fact, I'm going to look for a battery operated artificial light very soon for my home. Okay. Sabbath Eve, again, is very festive. Tefillat Erev is the evening of Shabbat. The beginning of the next day. Before you, every Jew around the world, if they're halfway observant, has a special family meal. They sing songs. They say prayers for Kaddish. We actually do Kaddish, prayer and brokos for grape juice or wine, and of course, very important for your bread, your challah, and things of that nature. To say prayers for that, you should always pray for the fruit of the vine and the grain and bread of the earth. We share that in common with rabbinate. I mean, we have a lot in common, really do. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things we just will never agree on for obvious reasons. Because we are Torah-centered Jews, they are more or less opinionated Talmudic Jews, where they base all of their rulings probably not from the Torah. Believe it or not, they say they do, but they don't. There's 613 mitzvot, and I just mentioned before all the rules for Shabbat. They actually have a Talmud tractate called Shabbat that has all these opinions about it, and then they have references back to the Torah and the Chumash. But these rabbinical opinions that Rashi, Johannes, and other people, they rule over even prophets of God. I mean, at least it seems that way as overlords. At least that's how it was in the Middle Ages. The Sabbath day, task forbidden on the Sabbath is a little bit different than rabbinates. I'll read a few of these here. Anything that is forbidden to us is also forbidden to anyone performing that act for us. So there's no Shabbat goy. I know some rabbis that in Orthodoxy frown against that, but it is a common practice. They do that, and they need to feed their families too. And they as long as you sign that contract before Shabbat, I guess it's okay for that because it's part of their job. But back in let me backtrack just a little bit about the law of modification. I just forgot something. I talked about turning off power. The reason why they're for turning off power completely, electric meter, power meter, whatever power company you use, you see that meter is always running. So in theory, you pay in cents and nickels and dimes and quarters and dollars, whatever, shekels, continually as long as that power is on. You're taking power. But I wanted to ask my Karaite brothers out there and sisters, what if you have a smart home and that you have solar panels and you're producing thousands of gigawatts of energy, and you're actually pushing power back to the power grid, and you're not paying anything. You're not paying anything. You're not paying anything. So it's free power. So how does that work? And I know there's solar panels in Israel. And when I get there, I'm going to ask these questions and see examples of this. Again, I'm a scientist, and I deal with hard science, but I also deal with the Torah, which is my nefesh, my breath of life. It means everything to me, more to me than any computer technology IT system. Bringing this to a close, the considered labor for Sabbath must be incidental. In other words, it's not something you plan for. You have set things in motion. It's back to the law of modification. It's different for the tabernacle, the temple, than your private residence. What I read and shared with my wife, and she was gleefully happy about this, some of the things in the Karaite home during Shabbat, in other words, just mild, I don't know what I'm trying to say, not tilling per se in your garden, but just going through your garden, checking for things and all this. If it brings you joy, and as long as it's not work and hard, you know the difference between. Tell your teenager to clean up the room. That's called work. That's Malachi. But a teenager will tell you what's considered work. But anything brings you joy. For instance, reading a book. Sometimes my wife knits, and she's not really creating anything. She's just knitting mindlessly, and it helps her stress. We have a Siamese cat, and she pets it, and we don't plan on eating it, so don't tell me I'm not allowed to have non-kosher animals in my mess, because a cat is cleaner than some Jews. All kidding aside, but anyway, anything that brings you joy, anything that brings you happiness, it's encouraged, it's allowed. As far as foods and everything else, everything is baked before that, so you eat everything cold. Okay, like casseroles, salads and things of this nature, something that doesn't need a lot of refrigeration. They do have ice chests with ice packs and things like that. That's how they keep food from spoiling when they turn off their freezer. I guess what they do, they time how much food they put in their freezer box in the refrigerator. Anything refrigerator stays cold for quite some time, even if you lose power, and this happens occasionally, even in the state of Maryland. If you have an ice and everything else and a ice chest, it actually stays cold and will not spoil, like dairy products, for instance. Okay, I might even experiment with this sometime and see how it works, because I'm a curious George. Actually, curious you are. As far as walking, sitting, standing, setting a table for eating, actually eating is not considered work. Drinking, the shelling of seeds and nuts and things like that. Sometimes you have to break the hulls off of a nut or whatever. It has a hard case or whatever. That's not considered work. It's just carrying and studying books. Anything that you carry to improve yourself that brings you joy. Legends and stories of Jewish customs and Jewish history. Good things there. Of course, reading the Tanakh is very much encouraged. If you can ascend your nefesh and elevate your soul, yeah, that's a mitzvah in itself, right? That's very good. Even washing your hands and feet. Well, if you're in a desert, you wear sandals, of course. And when people come over, you wash your feet. That's just a custom. I think Muslims do that. And even applying perfume, okay? Because you don't bathe, you don't take a shower, you don't heat water and things of that nature. And even our Orthodox brethren don't do that either, and I don't. I take a shower, I get extra clean and wash my hair and everything else. Whatever, body spray, perfume, cologne, or whatever. I get extra clean for the Queen of Shabbat coming to my home. And I stay clean. I try to the following day until I'm allowed to turn on the power, gas or whatever, and heat water and have a nice hot shower. Okay? All kidding aside. So how do we end our Shabbat? Well, it's actually precisely the same way as rabbinates do. Again, I told you, we do have a lot of things in common, especially in the observance of Shabbat. Okay? Some people are more stricter than others. Some people are more liberal in their view and what they allow to do. For instance, the mixture of dairy and meat and other kind of things is forbidden to do that. And among rabbinates, Karaites look at that a little bit differently. I was told by an Orthodox rabbi several years ago, you have to wait 6 hours after you eat some meat or beef or whatever, what's considered meat, in chicken and quail, things of that nature. Turkey is considered meat, not fish. You have to wait 6 hours before you eat some delicious dairy ice cream or eat some cheese. Cheat there is to eat all the dairy first, and then you can have beef afterwards. But Karaite Jews don't wait 6 hours. Some of them eat dairy and meat together. Some of them wait a little bit, to each their own. But the requirement that is not found in the Torah, it's mentioned is 2 places in the entire Torah that talks about do not boil a kid in its mother's milk. This is something that pagan Canaanites did. They actually would abuse and torture animals before a kid or a baby lamb could even finish being nursing or being weaned off of its mother, that kind of thing. They would actually take it live, essentially, and boil it in its own mother's milk. That was mistreatment and abuse to an animal, an innocent animal, That's the only reason Elohim mentioned that twice, is not about prohibitions, folks. Not about prohibitions of mixing dairy and meat. Okay? It's about abuse of animals. I just had to throw that in this conclusion. Havdalah ceremony is very beautiful. It's etchy. According to legend, I've read, when Adam and Havilah were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and they had their two sons there, and they did not understand the change of seasons. They were so used to the light of Elohim, lighting every day. There was no night. There's no darkness. They weren't afraid, but they were afraid when they were out in the wilderness, literally. And they could hear the howling of wolves and things of that nature. And of course, with the short nights happening in winter, they were very afraid. So God gave them the ability to learn how to cause light, to ignite flame and things of that nature. According to legend, that was first Havdalah candle. So that's what I like to think about. As I tell my daughter, she's afraid of the dark. And I said, don't the boys and girls in Jerusalem, don't the Karaite boys and girls in Ashdod in Israel, don't they deserve to have some of the Ha'ish, the sun, there with them, so they're not afraid? We share the sweet kiss of Elohim with our brothers and sisters across the world, including Nohites too. I give her some encouragement. She likes the Havdalah candle. You're not allowed to light a flame, of course, anytime during Shabbat. But this is the end of Shabbat. This is a signal and trigger from the holy and sacred to the mundane world. Okay? So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this small lecture, dissertation on rules for Shabbat for Karaite Jews and versus rabbinates or orthodoxy. Okay? We have a lot in common. We should focus on what we have in common and not focus so much on our differences. We should definitely don't use derogatory remarks against your fellow Jew. You hear about Lashon Hara, okay? You hear about witnesses. You need witnesses before you accuse any Jew of any wrongdoing. Just because you have a different view of the Torah, if you have a more purist view versus the looser view and the Talmudists, the rabbinates out there, it does not mean that someone's evil, okay? It doesn't mean they're a heretic. It means they have a different worldview and understanding based on how God himself, Elohim himself, Jehovah, revealed his wisdom, his immanent truth to them, Anyway, this Rev Yair ben-Emmett signing out for another exciting edition Torah Watchman show. Please subscribe, please share, and personal notify. And I will see you real soon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to me. And thank you also for sharing my videos with your friends, even your enemies. That's the best way to turn an enemy to a friend, is find something in common. There I go again. Take care.